Good morning everybody and welcome back to Building HYRULE Castle in Lego, the something ever week, I don't know. Anyway, this is the series where we are building a minifigure scale version of the Breath of the Wild HYRULE Castle pre-calamity in Lego form. And as you can see, the model is getting pretty large. Today, not only are we going to be taking a look at some brand new plates and details that we've included, but also the planning for a very crucial room, being the library, as well as the East Passage, as we work towards our 2024 goal of completing the entire ground floor, which doesn't sound like much, but this project has been going on for far too long. So join me as we jump into taking a look at these plates and all these new stories. So in the last one of these, I always say weeks, but really this does not happen every week. We were working on sort of the back right corner and we set up a couple of specific plates. And you'll notice that if I flash between these two images, you'll see that we're about, I want to say over 3/4, because there's only 5 missing plates left. But where we left off last time was we've been putting these scenes on these back sections to cover up the docks and start preparing for the library. And the first of those scenes was half completed there, and that was this little Guardian excavation site. Obviously, we know that HYRULE excavated thousands of Guardians all across the land, and we've already seen one of their ruins on a previous plate. But this area is an active Sheikah site because this is pre-calamity. And you can see that there is one sort of coming out the rock here, and it's got all of these scaffoldings around it as well. And I've gone in and added a load of extra details now. So we've got some crates stacked up with some of the stuff they've taken out of the excavation site. You can see some rock salt, obviously nodding to the material in game, as well as this crate here, which is actually filled with Technic cog pieces meant to represent ancient gears. Actually jumping over to this work table, you can see another ancient gear, but also an ancient shaft and an ancient spring, all brick built in a variety of different techniques, just to, again, reference those in-game images and more mechanics in that regard. And actually beneath that table, you can see a little bit of mud pile, as if that these artifacts have been scrubbed off in an archaeological way. And that's just made up of various tiles in medium nougat, dark orange, and reddish brown. I'm really enjoying the new mix of colours, and while none of those are brand new, I'm thinking of the new reddish orange, which isn't featured here, but I'm really excited for that to come in more colours and more parts so that we can actually use it. Over on the other side, we've got some buckets where maybe they're washing some things down, and you'll notice the top of another Guardian, this time in black, to show how it's sort of cleaner or in a different state, and there's actually a puddle of water on the floor. All these scaffoldings are built up around it, and actually it's really hard to see, but we've also got one of the blue flame torches from Hateno, and even further around the back there, you've got a mini ancient furnace, which is something that featured in Age of Calamity. So really drawing our inspiration from everywhere. Not much foliage around here. That's a deliberate choice because this is obviously a worked in area, so they've kind of cleared the land, or they're stomping it down, stopping many weeds from growing. Build a couple of simpler plants in new variation. I always love adding these different forms of life. And then of course we've still got the notebook up top and the new tarpaulin. Now before we move on to the new scenes, and trust me, it gets more exciting, I just wanted to remind you guys that we're currently running a competition for you, yes you, to be included in this HYRULE Castle model. I'm looking for submissions for ideas for what some of the mysterious rooms that we never see might be inside this castle. If you want more details, I recommend checking up the video that is linked up above. But you have until the 31st of October to submit your studio or real life builds for fun, wacky, or even realistic rooms, which might be hidden behind the blocked off corridors. So still plenty of time left to get building, but I encourage you to get your submissions into octane.thermoplastic@gmail.com or tag me in your YouTube video, however you like. But let's move on now to the next little area that I've got for you, and this is on a piece of rockwork that just sort of continues over this waterfall bridge, and this is sort of like a bird sanctuary, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. I like to imagine that these are not only like colourful, like a bird for the royal family, but also messenger pigeons and things like that, even though none of these look like pigeons, but like actually working birds that would be used in this medieval scenario, even though carrier pigeons are more associated with the 19th century. Anyway, it looks really pretty, and I quite like the aesthetics. It was actually inspired by one of the modular building roofs, which I believed also had one of these old-fashioned bird cages, or maybe I'm just thinking of Mary Poppins, I don't remember. Anyway, we've got 2 of these carriages facing into the wall with the lattice doors to give them that nice sort of shelved look, and you can see that they're open, letting the birds out. We've got blue ones and white ones and red ones, and they've got a little perch over here with a mini birdhouse and a little white dropping on the floor, because of course birds are messy. Lots of these 1x1 round tiles on the floor as well for seed, or again more poo, whatever you want to imagine. And you've got some sacks which probably have the bird seed in them off to the far right, where we've actually got a feeding table, which is making use of this ice cream cone and a dish piece upside down to recreate that little cute detail. I really like it. We've got a cloned tree over from previous sections. Again, I want to keep the tree varieties, and you're going to see that this is going to play in later, like as many tree species limited as possible, so that we've only got sort of 5, 6, 7 key types. to decorate the castle, so it actually feels like an ecosystem rather than just a technique showcase of all these different trees. And to mix it up, we've actually got some wild berry bushes as well down the bottom, and these are of course referencing the game, the wild berry item that you can pick up. Again, just want to get as many of these items in here as possible. And for those of you that are watching the CSS, this is a carbon copy build from Sonia's tea time, so that's really cute as well. I'm actually really glad to be using the Rivendell fern pieces for their intended purpose. In previous modules and extra areas of the castle, we've used them upside down for fern trees, similar to how they use them in the Tranquil Garden set, but here I'm using the lime to really give this area an extra little bit of pop and add that verdant vegetation. Sort of a technique I guess I learned from the official Deku Tree set. And they are surrounding a bird water table here, which is making great use of a dish. I really like that build. I really like the depth to this module, where you've got like the low vegetation at the front, then sort of a negative space, and then the bird houses at the back. But let's keep moving on to the new land. Everything from now is pretty much new terrain, although not quite this bottom part here, which was where we ended off last week, or last session, where we had this sort of chopped down wood yard, where you've got the wood stored up to maybe fuel the castle's fire. We've got a chopped down tree of a variety of different sizes and a little campfire for the workers. And round the back is actually the entrance to the east passage, which I'll show you the current state of planning on a little bit later on. But this takes us over to this big lump of terrain here, which has now been fully decorated. And this is definitely supposed to be sort of an orchard, specifically an apple orchard. All of these trees, apart from the birch ones, obviously are apple trees. We've got plenty of red apples hanging from the branches, and even a couple of golden ones, referencing the golden apple item from Tears of the Kingdom. And this orchard is supposed to be just next to where they cut down the wood, and you can imagine it's like a growing area where there's lots of little saplings down below, making great use of candlestick pieces and the minion hair piece in green. The canopy itself is using a variety of leaf elements, from the 5-prong one to the newest one that was used in the Deku Tree, to the 3-prong leaf used in green and dark green, and trying to mix in some colours to give this a bit of life, because yeah, it's a little bit messy, a little bit bulky, but it just looks so much better than it being flat, because it really adds a little bit of, I don't know, texture, despite it being so messy. And I really wanted it to be a closed canopy forest. Yes, you could argue that if it's an apple orchard, they would have been in rows, but that would have looked way too linear. So I thought this messier approach worked well. And you've still got a couple of chopped down trees in between where they've had to make space for new ones. And there's about 3 or 4 tree designs in here, so they're not all carbon copies, but you really can't tell when they're all together anyway. And then you may be wondering why we've got some cherry blossom saplings. This was actually inspiration from Tears of the Kingdom and the Satori trees. I like the idea that either the Koroks or the Deku trees seeds are spread all that throughout Hyrule when it's prosperous. So we've just got these saplings that have happened to take root here. Maybe we'll put a bigger cherry blossom tree somewhere else on Hyrule Castle Island. There are so many areas that just don't get fully explored in either Age of Calamity or have plenty of space to take some creative liberties, so maybe we'll do that in the future as well. But yeah, I quite like how this fills up this area. Let me know what you think. Maybe it's too busy for you guys. It actually does continue briefly onto the other side. I wanted it to look like some seedlings have made it across. So you've got this one apple tree here, and obviously this one wouldn't be harvested because it's kind of perilously separated. But we've also got a birch tree over here, again adding that bit of variety. We've seen birch trees in here before, and I really like this design. Not my design at all, but I really like how it looks. And you also notice this black lump of a tree here, and I like to imagine that this one has been struck by lightning. So it's using a couple more like straggly pieces, of course no leaves, and of course the reason it's been struck by lightning is because it has a metal sword, paying a nod to the physics system of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So I really like how that turned out. It's just another little Easter egg to spot when you're looking around this castle model. Then it moves us over to this new section. This is all brand new built. We've got the new wall segment here, which is all being textured up. I'm feeling much happier about my ability to sort of casually texture these in like a less intrusive way that still does a good job, so I'm really pleased with how that looks. You can see a couple of these baby blue flowers, not silent princesses, on there, and again some more replicated bushes and rock work, just to again keep things similar, but also have some empty space here, so you could imagine having like some soldiers posted. And this wall has a really interesting curve where it meets the right wall at a right angle there, and then does sort of an S shape over to the non-textured section, which yeah, by this point, look, I was tired. I did not want to texture any more sections there. I also want to mention this tree here that's hanging over the edge. It's got a darker color scheme, again using the darker leaves, but otherwise the trunk design is very similar. Again, I'm really trying to limit how many new trees I introduce, so I expect to see the ones we've talked about today, but also the ones that appeared when we looked at the west side in many more sections. But yeah, this whole section sort of drags us around. You can see in the backwards there the water pump room, meaning that yeah, this was sort of the 3/4 mark, and then I've pushed it a little bit further with these extra 2 plates. So of course we've got got the wall segment here, still needs to be textured, so this is just my default version, but the texturing I do will be completely unique. And of course I have to do some vegetation out the front as well, but then that will mark that plate complete. Look, I just wanted a change of pace, which you'll see later on. We also have down at the front, this is when it drops off, and actually this drop is important because this new lower level is actually so close to the front that this is sort of a continuous flow around back to the gatehouse. It starts off low and it gets higher and higher as we go, and as we go up, I'm going to use the tent designs from the Monster Control Cruise from Tears of the Kingdom to create sort of like some tents for some visiting soldiers, and we'll have a couple of wagons maybe and some more trees. But because this is so low down to the water, I imagined it as more of a boggy area, something that's a little damper. So we've got a completely different set of vegetation here. Again, dark green for the mosses with some water puddles on top, a lot more of this clayey rock boulder texture, and then more weed-like plants. So you've got with the dead bushes and then the curvy sort of swamp vines. But then also even in the green leaves, you'll notice we're using the white flowers and small stems to represent more smaller earthy plants. I'm thinking of root vegetables, particularly carrot family, or the ones that look like it. They're in the daisy family. Really compound flowers that, again, you don't really show up in Lego, but again, thinking of this more like humid, damp area that's a little bit different. But yeah, I like how contrasting it looks, but while also still feeling like it fits in. So big fan of that. Obviously we've got to get it out of swampy ground before we put soldiers sleeping there, because I don't imagine they'd want to live in a stagnant bog, although they would only be visiting, but that wouldn't be very hospitable of the king. So yeah, a couple more details to fill in here, but it really does highlight that there are only these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plates, and one of those is the final slope. So 5 more rockwork plates. But why did I not finish it for today? Well, 1, we ran out of time. I needed to get a HYRULE Castle video out. It's been like a couple of months. But 2, because I'm holding off doing these because I feel like if I finish these, I'll be able to say, done, easy, I meet my goal. But it won't truly be the case because we're missing some interior rooms, most notably the East Passage, which actually sits on this side of the castle. And if I really am going to complete this goal by the end of 2024, I feel like I have to do the East Passage too. Now, I want to make it clear that you might not actually see this goal finished in video form by the 31st of December 2024, but I will have it done on my end, meaning I will do a community post when I finish it, just to prove to you guys that I did meet the goal. But because video scheduling is done so far in advance with CSS stuff, and there's so much exciting things happening on the channel right now, you probably will not actually see all of those videos come to fruition until next year. But I'm hoping to have at least one more update up before the end of this year. So let me talk through about what's holding us back there, and that being the East Passage. And this is some planning documents that I have to show you. So starting behind where that entrance was, we saw it earlier just before the orchard, we're going to have a sort of sneaky snaking passage, and this has been modeled based off the game. You can see we've got a long stretch of roller coaster track because there is a minecart in here. If you're wondering why we're using roller coaster track and not say a more accurate flex tube system, one, much easier to model with roller coaster track in Studio than it is with flex tube, because the system's not quite fully developed how I'd like it to be personally. I don't know if they'll ever get there, but it's not there right now. And also too, I like functions. I think it would be cool to be able to sort of wind the roller coaster cars along the track. So even though it's less accurate in the wrong car, I prefer the function. You can see though that this drops down in height where there'd be a water pool, and obviously then turns around the corner. These red studs represent a little bit of raised terrain before you enter into this big open room, which is actually where the Talos fight is going to be. You can see also I've put some cones on the floor. These are where the biggest stalactites are going to be, where they're going to be separate from the cave wall to create sort of these nooks and crannies. And obviously I've got to put the water in, and I haven't even started at the top end where you actually board the roller coaster track now. So this is going to be my next project, is to get this in. But even to do this, we actually had to do a whole other section of planning. You'll notice these blue studs, and if I show you this overhead shot, you'll see that they connect here. And this is important because I could not position the East Passage until I knew about the library, because the library is a much more important feature that has more complicated things going on. And in order for us to finish the ground floor, the library obviously connects not only to the East Passage, but the docks. And if I'm going to position those right, it was easier to position the library. So that's what you're seeing now, is we've got this big curved panel, which is going to be the library floor. And you can see here it connects to the passageway for the docks, which is something I've been able to complete. Don't worry that this looks a little like short at the moment. I am going to up the height. It was just a mistake I made in the planning stage, but height luckily isn't the main problem here. The biggest thing I wanted to get done was the angle. So how this is going to work is the library is going to be built as a separate module, and then will fit nice and snugly into a gap made up of plates on all sides, allowing it just to snugly fit into where it needs to but be completely detached and float like its own module on top of an existing Technic frame. So that works really, really well. And yeah, once I kind of got a scale that I knew was going to work for the interior of the library, I was able to get the angle right and then the curve and sort of think about where it's going to fit on the exterior, because the exterior is obviously the priority with the library. And then from there, I was just able to extend it inwards and just tinker around. And it took a surprisingly long time. And if you look closely in the back of these renders, you can actually see the construction lines and other sections of wall which are going to, which help me place this in position. As for the actual details here, you'll notice we've got some multicolored stuff going on, specifically these red 2x2s. These are the outlines for pillars. In the game, the library has like, I want to say 6 or 7 of these, but again, we're cheapifying it here and it just doesn't make sense to have them all crammed together, and it allows me to have them more detailed here. It's the unfortunate nature of scaling down, and I'd rather have less pillars and accurately scaled bookshelves than just loads and loads of pillars and then these really squishy bookshelves and desks. You'll also notice some coral on the floor, and this is a temporary thing because the floor technique we're using is the offset jumper stud one where you put everything at diagonals. These coral ones represent ones that currently aren't attached, so it's actually an in-house marker for me to go in and know which ones I need to deal with later. The reason that it isn't as simple as the normal version of this technique is because this is actually built on 3 sections that are angled together using the 3x12 wedges, which do come together at a really beautiful angle but create some really awkward angles, which is why you're seeing some wedge plates and some 1x2 tiles. But I actually like a little bit of the mess to it. It makes it look a little less uniform and a little more natural, which again wasn't something I was expecting to love, but hey ho, here it is anyway. So yeah, I'm gonna have to find a way to attach those down, but that is a problem for future Octane. As for other areas here, you may be wondering how that connects into the edge of the walls, and we're just making use of the rail plates to hide all the gaps. But yeah, I've made good progress with that flooring just to test if it was possible. And then at either end we have the stairway, and this was another important part of the scaling, not just because I needed to make sure that the stairs would be in a good position and height compared to the outside of the module, and that the library wouldn't be too tall because it's all supposed to fit on this layer 1 plate and not go any higher. I realize I'm talking a lot of jargon for this project, but it is a very jargon intensive project. I'm very excited to work on the library because it's going to be a unique challenge, but also an incredibly distinct room. A shame it won't be happening until East Passage and the ground floor is finished. But as soon as the ground floor is finished and the gatehouse is done, yeah, this is going to be the first thing I come back to and work on, because it really does hold the key to the rest of the interior rooms and the back side of the castle. And also holds the most extreme overhang, but that's a whole thing for another day. Anyway, completely distracted from staircases. I needed to make sure the staircases were big enough to fit figures up. I need to make sure that the heights were right, and also positioning them here allows me to put in these secret rooms, being the King's Study, and then of course where the East Passage connects to, which brings us right back to that original image I showed you with the East Passage, where you can see that this grey plate lines up exactly with where I want the rock cliff work to be for the East Passage secret entrance. So yeah, all works out. You can also see here it pins in this height at the 2nd level and just shows you how much I'm going to have to raise the outside terrain up by. I don't think I'm going to raise it up by that much. For those of you that don't know, the outside access to the library is actually on the 2nd floor of the building, but in my head I could always put a little step of stairs, maybe 1, 2, 3 plates or so. So I'm looking for the green plate on the outside, hopefully I'm showing you what I mean, to be maybe a brick and a plate lower than this balcony section in grey up here, because that will be the halfway point of the library, and that should be at the same height as that. But then it just gets things messy for the outer wall and then heights, and things get confusing. Anyway, don't need to worry about this geometry today because the library is not our main focus. Anyway, those are the big 3 main areas I wanted to show you. I had a lot of fun doing the scenes. It's nice to mix things up and not have to just do rock work all the time, although we really are getting to that point where I'm feeling really impassioned to work on this last part of the model. We've just got that last final slog of the East Passage, which is just all rock work and not very interesting to get through first, and then we're on a really exciting run to the front, and then of course the front gatehouse, which will again add so much scale and life to the whole model. To be honest, it's got me really wondering about how much quicker the 2nd layer should be. I mean, in theory it won't be, because the model itself will get more complicated, meaning I have to put more time and thought into each individual unit. But in theory the castle just gets smaller from here and goes upwards so quickly, and you forget we've got a large chunk of the 2nd floor done. There are also a lot more interior rooms, and while I like to think of the floor 1 as being like the last major one before Sanctum, it's not strictly true. We've got floor 1, floor 2, and I think potentially floor 3 is where the Sanctum is. So it's, yeah, we're talking like a third of the main bulk of the castle, and then the Sanctum still on top of that, plus all these interior rooms and all these secret Easter eggs I want to add. But that is another thing, that is an excitement that we get to have in the future. Of course, As I mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to submit your models. We've got an amazing team of judges, and check out those details for what you need to do to enter this competition. It is a chance to get your model included in this castle, and anyone that enters also gets to choose a part that goes inside the castle's treasure room as well, which is my own little addition to this model. It's coming along great. Every time I add a new module, I'm really surprised. I'm so motivated, and I really do think we're actually within a chance of making that goal, as long as I don't get distracted by wave 5 of the CSS. Anyway, let me know what you think of the new stories, plates, and planning today, and how complicated the library is going to be. And I know you guys are excited to see that one. But yeah, let me know what you thought down below, and I will see you again next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.